You know, usually when we look at something in nature, we expect it to have a very specific sensory profile.
Right.
Like you see a rose, you expect it to smell like a rose, you see lemon, and you know exactly what that sharp acidic burst is going to feel like in your nose.
Oh, yeah, you can almost taste it just thinking about it.
Exactly. It's this very honest, straightforward transaction with the natural world. But then you look at a fern. Beautiful, green, lush, ancient.
And completely odorless.
Yes,
Right.
completely odorless. It smells like practically nothing. Which makes it incredibly strange that for the last, 140 years or so, one of the most famous dominant fragrance categories in the world has been dedicated entirely to the smell of a fern.
It's wild. It really is the ultimate olfactory illusion. I mean,
Oh.
a completely invented fantasy scent,
Right?
and it's an illusion that has somehow managed to survive over a century of radical cultural shifts, completely evolving chemistry, and just, highly volatile fashion trends.
Which is exactly what we are exploring today. So welcome to this custom deep dive designed specifically for you.
We're so glad you're here.
We really are. Today we are going to decode a word you have absolutely seen printed on the side of cologne bottles, a scent profile you have definitely smelled walking down the street, but a category you might not, fully understand. We are unpacking the Fougère, pronounced Fougère.
Yes, Fougère.
We're pulling from an incredible mix of sources today. We're diving into the 19th century archives of modern perfumery and tracing that thread all the way up to the cutting-edge 2026 men's grooming trend reports.
Stuff from Ape to Gentleman, W Magazine, and Real Men, Real Style.
Exactly. Our mission is to figure out why this 140-year-old fantasy style is just completely dominating the market right now, how it has shape-shifted over the decades, and where it's evolving next. So let's unpack the word itself to start. Fougère is simply French for fern.
Yep.
But if ferns don't yield an extractable essential oil, how do you make a perfume out of one?
Well, you build it from scratch using science.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, the birth of the Fougère isn't just a story about some clever perfumer having a good day in the lab. It is a story about a massive technological breakthrough in organic chemistry. We really have to go back to the year 1882.
Okay, 1882. Set the scene for us.
So there's a perfumer named Paul Parquet, and he's working for the French house of Houbion. And he decides to release a fragrance called Fougère Royale.
And from what I understand, Fougère Royale essentially breaks the mold of everything that came before it, right? Because up until the late 19th century, perfumery was highly literal.
Oh, extremely literal.
Perfumers were basically just extracting whatever they could find in nature. Crushing flowers, pressing citrus rinds, tapping trees for resin. If you bought a perfume in 1850, you were going to smell like an actual bouquet of jasmine. Or maybe a walking orange grove.
Right. Highly literal and honestly somewhat limiting. You could only make what nature gave you. But then, in 1868, a chemist named William Henry Perkin managed to synthesize a compound called coumarin.
Coumarin. Okay, what exactly is that?
So coumarin is a naturally occurring organic chemical. It's actually what gives tonka beans their really distinctive smell. But now, for the very first time, it could be reliably synthesized in a laboratory setting at scale.
Oh, wow. So you didn't have to harvest a million beans anymore.
Exactly. And coumarin has an incredibly distinct, sweet, almost narcotic scent. Think of like freshly mown hay drying in the late summer sun, but with this really subtle undertone of toasted almonds.
That sounds incredible.
It's beautiful. So Paul Parquet got his hands on this brand new lab-created aroma chemical and decided to build an entire composition around it.
And he paired that sweet, grassy coumarin with two other major players, right? To create what the industry now calls the classic Fougère skeleton.
Yeah, the magical trio. So he added lavender and oak moss.
Lavender and oak moss.
Right, so you have lavender, which brings this sweet, herbaceous, and slightly sharp quality right at the top. And then to anchor the entire composition, he used oak moss.
And oak moss is exactly what it sounds like, right?
Pretty much. It's an extract derived from a specific lichen that grows on the trunks of oak trees in really damp climates. It smells like ink, earth, and profound dampness. It's the absolute essence of a dark forest floor.
So we have this structure. The lavender brings the clean, bright aromatics. The coumarin provides that sweet, grassy bridge in the center. And the oak moss drags the whole thing down into the damp earth.
You nailed it.
Parquet basically created the idea of a fern. He told the world, if God had bothered to give ferns a scent, this is what it would be.
Yes.
It honestly feels like the CGI of the 19th century. Like they used bleeding-edge science to invent an experience that did not exist in reality. I am curious, though, if it was totally synthetic and completely unprecedented, how did Victorian society react to it? Was it too abstract for them?
Well, actually, it completely captivated the cultural elite.
Really? They loved
They
it.
obsessed over it.
Yeah.
It was a sensation precisely because it wasn't literal. We actually have this incredible record of the French writer Guy de Maupassant, who was one of Fougère Royale's earliest and most fervent champions.
Yeah. Oh, I think I read about this in the archives. What did he say?
He wrote a letter to a friend just raving about the scent, describing it as, and I love this phrasing, a prodigious evocation of forests or moorlands, not of their flora, but of their greenery.
Wow. Not of their flora, but of our greenery. That captures the shift perfectly. It wasn't about identifying a specific flower anymore. It was about capturing an atmosphere.
Exactly. The mood of a dense, shaded wood, the damp soil, the sweet air, the fresh herbs.
That's fascinating.
It really marked the birth of modern abstract perfumery. Parquet proved that a perfumer could be a composer of original ideas rather than just, an imitator of nature.
Okay, so we know what the Fougère is, and we know it was a massive artistic success. But here is where the history takes a sharp left turn.
The plot twist.
Yeah, the plot twist. Because anyone listening who follows the fragrance world knows that today, the Fougère is universally considered the quintessential scent of a man. I mean, it is the undisputed backbone of men's cologne. But digging into the historical archives reveals a serious surprise. Fougère Royale was originally formulated, packaged, and marketed as a luxury perfume for women.
It was. Like almost all fine fragrances of the era, the target demographic was wealthy women. There really wasn't a huge men's perfume market in the same way.
So how did we get from women's luxury to the ultimate men's staple?
Well, within a few years of its release, refined urban men, like the dandies of the late 19th century, they simply hijacked it. They just started wearing this women's perfume en masse.
Let's figure out why. What was it about that specific combination of lavender, hay, and oak moss that resonated so strongly with guys back then?
It really comes down to scent associations and daily routines. For a wealthy gentleman in the 1880s, the barbershop was a daily sanctuary.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it was where men went to be groomed, shaved, and socialized. And the aromatic backdrop of those barbershops consisted of harsh lavender tonics, herbal soaps, and woody shaving creams.
Oh, I see. So the lavender and the woody, mossy base in Fougère Royale essentially triggered a massive scent memory for them. It smelled like the ultimate, hyper-luxurious version of getting a straight razor shave.
Exactly. It felt inherently grooming adjacent, so men co-opted it, and the major Parisian fragrance houses immediately recognized the commercial potential.
Right.
Like they were not going to leave money on the table.
Right, of course.
By 1889, the House of Guerlain introduced a fragrance called Jicky. And Jicky is a monumental milestone because it took Parquet's Fougère skeleton and just violently evolved it.
Jicky is actually the oldest perfume still in continuous production today, right? Like you can still go buy it.
Yes, you can. And its longevity is really due to its sheer structural brilliance. Guerlain kept the lavender, the coumarin, and the oak moss. But they injected synthetic vanillin to make it richer, and this is the crazy part, they added civet.
Wait, civet, isn't that an animal musk?
Yeah, it's a deeply musky animalic gland secretion.
Wow.
I know, it sounds gross, but adding just a microscopic trace of something that dirty and feral underneath the squeaky clean lavender created this incredible, almost scandalous tension.
Like clean and dirty at the same time.
Precisely. But more critically, from a technical standpoint, Jicky is celebrated for introducing the vertical structure to perfumery.
Wait, let me deduce this. If
Yeah.
we are talking about a vertical structure, we are talking about manipulating the molecular weights of the ingredients, right?
Okay, spot on. Guerlain engineered the formula so that the molecules would evaporate at radically different rates.
That makes so much sense. So the highly volatile, lightweight citrus and lavender molecules burn off your skin within the first 20 minutes, providing that explosive opening.
Right.
Then the medium-weight coumarin and spices take over for the next few hours. And finally, those massive, heavy oak moss and civet molecules act as fixatives, anchoring to your skin for the rest of the day.
You've got it. That feat of engineering applied to the Fougère skeleton became the absolute blueprint for 20th century perfumery. And it set the stage for the category to completely dominate the men's market.
Which brings us to, well, the powerhouse era.
The hyper-macho peak?
Oh, yeah.
Looking back at the historical timelines, by the time we roll into the 1970s and 1980s, these are the colognes that defined a whole generation of men. We are talking about Brut, Paco Rabanne pour Homme, Coros by Yves Saint Laurent, and the absolute titan of the 1980s Drakkar Noir.
Drakkar Noir is the defining aromatic fougère of that decade. Housed in that aggressive matte black bottle, I mean, it was loud, it was bracing, and it was designed to project across a crowded nightclub or a chaotic trading floor.
Totally. It is the scent of Wall Street guys with giant cell phones and pinstripe suits. But I have to push back on something here, because this is wild to me.
Sure, go for it. I have a really hard time buying that a scent goes from a dainty Victorian women's perfume to the aggressive, chest-thumping signature of a hairy-chested 80s guy without the actual chemical formula becoming inherently more masculine along the way. Surely they must have changed the skeleton to make it that macho.
You would completely assume that, but if you strip Drakkar Noir down to its studs, it is still just lavender, coumarin, and oak moss.
Wait, really?
Truly. The journey of the fougère is the ultimate proof that our associations with scent, like what we deem masculine versus feminine, are purely cultural conditioning.
That is mind-blowing.
Yeah, there is absolutely nothing inherently male about the molecular structure of lavender, just as there's nothing biologically female about the smell of a rose. The 1980s fragrance houses simply wrapped that 1882 skeleton in aggressive marketing, sharp citrus notes, and heavy leather accords, and society decided it was the scent of alpha masculinity.
Which means fragrance gender is effectively a marketing construct. And that realization is the perfect lens for examining what is happening in the current market today. Because if the fougère peaked decades ago with those loud, room-clearing 80s colognes, why are the 2026 grooming reports so obsessed with it?
It's a great question.
I was scanning the latest trend pieces from Ape to Gentleman, and there is one massive, undeniable takeaway. Heritage fragrance is back.
It is, but the nuance there is critical. The heritage style is back, but it has been heavily edited.
How so?
Well, the men buying fragrances in 2026 are definitely returning to those barbershop fougères and soapy, aromatic profiles. They want that sense of gravitas, structure, and tradition. What they do not want is a time machine that makes them smell like a 1985 used car salesman.
Right. The projection monster. So how do you modernize a 140-year-old formula?
Modern perfumers are taking that classic 18E2 skeleton and putting it on a strict, ruthless diet. They're utilizing leaner formulations, extracting higher quality, more transparent raw materials, and completely stripping away the dense, suffocating elements that define the powerhouse era.
I see that clearly in the rankings from W Magazine and Real Men, Real Style. The fragrances dominating the top spots are undeniably fougère, but they feel completely alien to something like Brut. Take Dior Sauvage Elixir.
Oh, great example.
Yeah, it is classified as an aromatic fougère, maintaining that classic lavender opening and using patchouli, which is a very deep, sweet, earthy leaf, to simulate that mossy base. But then they inject it with cinnamon, nutmeg, and licorice.
And the licorice is such a brilliant, modern touch. It adds a cold, bracing, almost anise-like spice that completely updates the traditional barbershop feel, or, look at YSL Le Parfum, another massive modern hit.
Oh, yeah, that one's huge right now.
It really is. It takes the clary sage and the lavender of a traditional fougère, but it brightens the entire composition with crisp green apple and sharp ginger. It feels incredibly energetic and luminous, while still remaining grounded in that classic woody base.
It is exactly like taking a vintage 1960s muscle car, preserving that beautiful, aggressive silhouette that everybody loves, but completely ripping out the old gas-guzzling V8 engine and dropping in a silent, hyper-efficient, incredibly fast electric motor. It looks like heritage, but it drives completely differently.
I love that analogy. It gets right to the core of the fougère's timeless quality. Because the fougère is not a literal scent, because it is essentially an abstract piece of invisible architecture, it can be infinitely adapted to reflect the values, technology, and tastes of any given era.
That makes perfect sense. We have seen the fougère leaned out and sharpened for the modern man, but the 2026 trend reports point to an even more seismic shift happening right now, a shift that honestly brings this entire 140-year story full circle.
Oh, absolutely.
The most significant movement in 2026 is the total dissolution of the for him and for her barrier.
Right. Genderless fragrance has moved from a niche indie concept to completely dominating the mainstream market. Consumers, particularly younger demographics, are actively rejecting the rigid, overproduced marketing categories of the 1990s and early 2000s.
They just don't care about the labels anymore.
They really don't. They are prioritizing the narrative, the emotion, and the actual raw materials over tired gender cliches.
The Ape to Gentleman report notes that we are essentially returning to the 1882 mindset, where a beautiful scent is simply a beautiful scent and anyone can wear it. And major fashion houses are leading this charge using the fougère. YSL's Libra is a phenomenal example.
It really is a masterpiece.
It's a massive commercial success, marketed primarily to women, yet its core structure is a classic lavender-heavy fougère.
Libra proves the point beautifully. They took the masculine barbershop staple, pushed the lavender to the absolute front, sweetened it with orange blossom, and created a blockbuster women's release. But you also see this in the explicitly unisex space. Maison Margiela's Coffee Break is a brilliant execution of a totally gender-neutral fougère.
Yes. And coffee break ties directly into another major trend highlighted in the reports, the rise of Gourmand 2.0.
Right, so the gourmand category historically refers to fragrances that smell distinctly edible things built around vanilla, chocolate, or cotton candy.
Like you're walking through a bakery.
Exactly. But for a long time, gourmands were criticized for being overly syrupy, cloying, and frankly, a bit juvenile. But Gourmand 2.0 in 2026 is an entirely different beast. It focuses on darker, moodier, and much more sophisticated edible notes. We are seeing things like roasted espresso beans, bitter almond, saffron, and dark maple.
So perfumers are taking these dark, savory gourmand notes and draping them directly over the old fougère skeleton. Like in Coffee Break, you have this incredible clash between the hot roasted milky espresso accord and the cool, sharp, herbaceous lavender.
Exactly. Instead of just pairing the lavender and oak moss with the traditional herbs, woods, or leathers of the 20th century, perfumers are successfully mixing them with burnt caramel or bitter coffee.
And it still works.
It works perfectly. It is a testament to just how structurally robust Paul Parquet's original 1882 invention really was. The balance between the sweet coumarin, the sharp lavender, and the dark moss is so perfectly calibrated that it can support almost any bizarre modern trend you decide to layer on top of it without collapsing into a muddy mess.
That invisible architecture holds strong no matter what you build around it.
It is the ultimate blank canvas in perfumery.
So synthesizing everything we've pulled from these archives and trend reports, what does this mean for you, the person listening right now?
Yeah, what's the takeaway?
It means that tomorrow morning, when you are getting ready and you spray on a fragrance that smells a little fresh, slightly woody, and maybe a bit herbal or sweet, take a moment to really analyze it. Because there is a very high probability that you are wearing a piece of invisible architecture engineered in a Parisian laboratory in 1882. You are wearing the fantasy scent of an odorless fern.
A fantasy that has survived by being the ultimate chameleon.
Exactly. It started as an elegant luxury for 19th century Victorian women. It was hijacked by barbershop frequenting dandies. It bulked up and mutated into the chest-bearing, room-clearing macho powerhouses of the 1980s. And now, in 2026, it has leaned out, shed the gender labels entirely, mixed in some roasted espresso and ginger, and reclaimed its rightful spot as a refined, incredibly versatile staple for absolutely anyone.
It really is a masterpiece of human imagination and chemical engineering. And honestly, looking at that trajectory leaves us with an incredibly compelling question about where we go from here.
Oh, I love a good hypothetical. What are you thinking?
Well, the entire fougère category, this massive global industry, was only born because 19th century chemistry finally allowed us to synthesize a single molecule coumarin. It allowed us to invent a fantasy smell that did not exist in the natural world. Today, in 2026, we are living through an era of exponential advancements in AI-generated fragrance formulas and incredibly complex bioengineered aroma chemicals. We have access to molecular tools that Paul Parquet couldn't have even comprehended. So if simple 1880s chemistry gave us the enduring fantasy of the fern,
Wow, okay.
yeah, what completely new, impossible fantasy scent categories are the algorithms and biolabs about to invent for us next?